isolated because of his status would be devastating. And I'll also say part of the reason the government is arguing that he should be confined immediately is the obstruction charge, which alleges that after he knew that he was a target, he continued to make choices that exacerbated his struggles. They say he's a menace, Your Honor. We need him in custody.
The racketeering conspiracy charge alone carries a life sentence or a maximum penalty of up to life in prison. So, I mean, this is about as serious as it gets. I think a lot of people, though, after this long of an investigation, I mean, it had been going on since March. The feds have more than a 90% conviction rate, so they always have their ducks in a row when they issue an indictment. I think a lot of people were wondering, wow, 3 charges. It's 3 charges. Maybe they were expecting more. So were you expecting more to come out of this other than what we're seeing right here?
Well, first I'll say a federal investigation since March isn't that long. So they prioritized this. They got there pretty quickly. It doesn't surprise me that it's 3 charges. What will not surprise me is his continuing to fight. And there is very little willingness of people who are high profile to actually accept responsibility. He has a presumption of innocence. He has every right to go to trial. Though with the evidence and what we're seeing, if convicted, he's looking at like the R. Kelly scenario, decades in prison. And I hope at some point, if the evidence is so overwhelming, he can say, if I've done something wrong and created victims, how can I make amends beyond just scratching checks? This is also devastating for my family. Is there some path to accept responsibility and plead guilty? Because if he's able to do that, he sets himself up for a scenario where he might not spend the rest of his life in prison, can actually have some freedom and begin to get on the right side of the law and identify with people that he's hurt. The issue is Sam Bankman-Fried, Elizabeth Holmes, so many people, R. Kelly, despite overwhelming evidence, they continue to go down this path of going to trial, claim that they are the victim. And if and when they lose, a sentence that could be 10 or 15 years. I'm not saying 10 or 15 years isn't a long time, but it's not 40 years or 30 years, which could be in his path. And they'll really get tight for him, I suspect, in time. Once a lot of these enablers, you read all about him in the indictment, enabled the conduct, turned the other way, his partners, business partners, they didn't want to lose their job, the fame that accompanies working with him. When some of those people begin, as they say, to roll over and cooperate, because they don't have his resources. So at some point they need to say, I need to get on with my life and I don't want to serve 10 or 20 years in prison. What can I do to potentially get a shorter sentence, accept responsibility? And if that means cooperating against Sean Combs, so be it. And you can expect those things to happen. The government's very good at getting people to cooperate, and that can induce some people to plead guilty, though I suspect he's taking it all the way to trial.
Diddy. Well, and I was going to ask you about that, about the so-called enablers mentioned in the indictment. I mean, he didn't, according to the U.S. attorney, do this by himself. There was an enterprise that takes more than one person. And he's having, according to the U.S. attorney, people shipped in for these freak-offs. I mean, the freak-offs feature very prominently in this indictment. So he didn't do all of this by himself. He wasn't hanging out, handing out drugs by himself to participants, giving IV fluids to freak-off participants. I mean, this was going on with the assistance and the help of a lot of people. We already know that Brendan Paul, the guy accused of being his drug mule, has entered a plea in Florida, so he may be cooperating. Do you expect that other people already are cooperating if they aren't, or will be soon? Because this has got to send a chill down the spine of a lot of people who were in his orbit. You said that you expect people to be cooperating, but do you think there may already be people cooperating?
I think people are already cooperating and help them build their case so quickly. When the FBI shows up, I know because they showed up to my home, one of the first questions they'll ask is there anything you'd like to tell us? That's an opportunity to give the government everything you possibly have with the hopes of getting what's called a 5K1 in the federal system, a cooperation letter to the judge expressing why this defendant is worthy of a shorter sentence. So certainly people are cooperating. And we can't forget, people are enamored with celebrity and stardom in this country. When you have power and influence and you have people who sense an opportunity to make a living and live a lifestyle they never could have imagined, it's easy to rationalize their conduct. I work for him. It's his decisions. I don't want to lose the payday. These people are complicit. They're a part of it. And oftentimes these people in retrospect will say, I made bad decisions. So they're going to get a shorter sentence because they cooperated and they did what so many high profile people fail to do. apologize. In these statements from lawyers and Sean Combs, there is very little identification with victims. Even his former girlfriend, he only eventually apologized after it came out on film that he had beat her. Even in that, it was self-serving. I think he said God or someone forgave him. So it tends to all be about him, and it doesn't help when you have the lawyers enabling the conduct. The lawyer said with all he's done, he should remain free. What has he done since 2008 to demonstrate that he lives as a law-abiding citizen according to the government? And lastly, I'll say, oftentimes people will plead guilty in federal court, get a shorter sentence because the judge will say, this went on over a month or two, was a crime of passion. You embezzled money 3 times, it was wrong, you're going to be held accountable. They're alleging 16 years. So you can't allege this is out of character for him. Here's what the government's going to say. This is his character to victimize other people, and worse, he fails to accept responsibility. He makes it all about himself. And that's why he's looking at decades in prison.
Do you expect more to come out of this? The U.S. Attorney said this is an ongoing investigation, urged people to come forward. Do you expect a superseding indictment? Is this just the beginning?
I can't predict if more superseding indictments are coming, but certainly I think people they're cooperating, and therefore they're lawyering up. They're sitting in their home somewhere thinking, do I go to them, or are they going to come to me? Are they going to come and raid my home at 6 a.m. with the guns and the helicopters and take me into detention? And maybe they don't have the resources to post bond, or the lawyers advocating on their behalf. So more is coming, and I can tell you from having just a dude that served a measly 18 months in a minimum security camp a long time ago, the hardest part is the waiting and wondering, are they coming? And if they come, what does that mean? And if they arrest me and I plead guilty, how long will I serve in prison? And I will say again, these sorts of crimes, look at where R. Kelly is serving time. It's not in a camp. They're in higher security prisons where you're locked down, oftentimes isolated because the stigma that accompanies this sort of crime. So yes, people are freaked out and they're worried about what's coming next.
Well, we will watch. We will continue to watch. Justin Paperny, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
And that's it for this edition of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thank you so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.